Hi, Chef Caroline here with Ryan Reed. Ryan Reed is a professional stock car racer and he competes in NASCAR Xfinity Series. He also eats a plant-based diet. In February of 2011, Ryan was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and was told that he would never race again. We'll touch a little bit more on that later, but right now, let's introduce Ryan Reed, and I want to hear a little bit about how you got your start as a race car driver. So I read somewhere that you started driving when you were 4 years old. Is that true?
Yeah, my dad raced, and so it was kind of something that I grew up around. And like, I mean, from the time I was in my earliest memories are at the racetrack, either watching my dad race or then obviously, like you said, when I was 4, I started racing go-karts, and mom was a little stressed out about her 4-year-old racing go-karts, but I was like right from the get-go, I was just so in love with the sport and racing and going fast, and so it's been something that I've just had such a huge passion for. And I've been really fortunate to have a family and a dad who was, really into racing. So it was something that started as kind of something me and him did together, and kind of more of a hobby. I don't know if it was ever a hobby to me. It was always like the thing that I loved the most. And but then obviously grew into something so much more.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like it's kind of in your blood. Was there one specific moment that you remember deciding like, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life? Or was it just kind of a slow transition and it had a lot of elements feeding into it?
Yeah, I actually get that question quite a bit. And, it's funny because like I don't remember a time where I was like, I want to be a NASCAR driver when I grew up. Like, I remember growing up and me and my dad would watch cup races on Sunday afternoons, and he would sit on the couch, and there's times where I fell asleep. Watching guys driving circles can be a little bit boring at sometimes, but regardless, I just loved it. I was always attached to it, and like I always wanted to be a NASCAR driver, and that was it. And like there wasn't a defining moment. It was forever, and I never wavered from that. It was like just day in and day out. And I think that that's one of the things that I think about now. And I think it's so cool, and I've been so fortunate is like, I carried that dream, and now I'm 25 doing what I love to do. And I think that it's been really special. I'm really fortunate to be able to live out that dream like that.
Wow, yeah, you are really lucky. I can't even imagine going that fast on a racetrack. When did you first set foot in a race car and start driving around the track? How old were you?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's not, it's so much different than like football or baseball, stickball type traditional sports. It you progress really quickly, and especially today's age, it seems like kids are younger and younger. And when I was 13, I got in this series called a Legends car, which is like a miniature stock car. You start going 120, 130, 140 some places. So, I mean, that was really cool thinking back, 13-year-old going that fast. Scary thinking about it now, but at the time I was like, oh, I got this. But the first time I got in like a full-size stock car, I was 16. At the time you had to be 16. Now you have kids that get in these things at 14, 15 years old, which is nuts. But, that's when, we're really going fast. And then, from there, the first time I got into NASCAR and into what I was 18 years old. The first time I was able to get inside what's considered today is NASCAR.
Wow, that's incredible. So you've been doing this for a while. So it must have been really devastating then when they told you was it 2011 that you weren't going to be able to race anymore because of your type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, I mean that. I've talked a lot about that and been super open about the diagnosis and the challenges of it. Even today, the challenges of living with diabetes. But that diagnosis was so tough for a lot of reasons. I was 17 years old, and it was a very pivotal time. And 17 is a pivotal time in anyone's life, right? I mean, like you're starting to figure out what you're doing and where you're going. But for me, I was in the process of moving from California, where I grew up, to North Carolina, which is kind of like the hub of NASCAR, North Carolina. Charlotte, North Carolina is. And, I was so excited, right? I mean, I'm moving to North Carolina to chase my racing dreams. I was moving out of mom and dad's house, and so that's always exciting. Get a little freedom. And kind of right in the middle of all that, I started getting pretty sick, and I was sick for 2 to 3 months and losing a lot of weight. All the symptoms of diabetes that I now know, didn't know then. And, went to the doctor, and they diagnosed me on the spot with type 1 diabetes. And, my mom was in there, and, she's terrified, right? Her son just got diagnosed with a lifelong disease that there's no cure for. And I'm not really scared of all. I don't know what it means for me. Like, personally, I just am like, well, first question I had is, so how does this affect me in the race car? And that's when the doctor said, look, you're never going to race again, Ryan. And then they said, you have to focus on living a normal life, quotes, because like for me, what is a normal life outside of driving race cars? Like, I'm 17 years old. I mean, I've been racing since I was 4. So 13 of my 17 years it's been surrounded by racing. And so that was tough. And I think, it was definitely an emotional time for me, thinking that a disease I had no control over was going to dictate my future. And then, in all that though, I really got to realize, and 17 years old, I think it's easy to take family and the people around you for granted. And I really remember just like come to that realization, like how great my parents were and how supportive, and they really got me through that whole time. My whole family did. So it was tough, but I was very fortunate to have everyone around me like I did to help me kind of climb over those emotional hurdles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, somebody tells you you can't do what you love for the rest of your life. That's got to be terrible. So when did you make the decision that you weren't going to take that diagnosis sitting down, that you weren't going to let that determine your future in racing?
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, and I didn't know how to take it. It just, it's a doctor tells you, a medical professional tells you that, hey, this is how it is. I mean, I thought that was pretty close to what was going to happen. I wasn't sure. I didn't have a lot of knowledge about diabetes. I had no confidence in any of that, what was going on, enough to say, oh, I'm good. I don't have to listen to you. And so I remember just starting to do a lot of research over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and was learning more about diabetes. I was learning how to take shots every day, which was not fun. And pricking my finger, putting blood on a test, just doing all the things, and learn how to count carbs and like do all this nutritional stuff that I was 17 years old, and all I had ever done, is go to school, work on race cars and drive race cars. I mean, nutrition and carbohydrates and protein and insulin, all that stuff was not in my vocabulary even a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started to go from there and just learn about diabetes. And then, I'd heard about a couple different athletes. And so then I just really dove into that. And I remember diving in and researching all these different athletes and, just trying to learn more about the disease. And I found a doctor in Southern California, about 2 hours away from my hometown, that worked with like a number of, I just remember seeing her name pop up in multiple different athlete articles. And I was like, wow, like she seems to be like the diabetes athlete doctor. And I was like, it's only 2 hours away. Of course, she has a waiting list a mile long. And so like trying to get in there was not easy. And so we really, between myself and my parents, we just kind of wore them out and got the receptionist to finally put Ann on the phone. And when Ann personally finally heard my story, which is the endocrinologist, doctor, diabetes specialist that I'm referring to, she was like, hey, this is a tragic story. Can you be here tomorrow? I think I can make a difference. I went in there and she was like, I told her, and I was pretty defeated and dejected at this point, but I just wanted to keep trying. And she was like, look, Ryan, don't worry. We're going to get you back in a race car. We're going to make this happen. And I remember just thinking like, wow, like this is, the first time in months since my diagnosis that I had any sort of true optimism. And I remember that really turning my focus, like diabetes will not hold me back. And I'm going to control my diabetes, not the other way around.
Wow, that must have been so exciting. I can't even imagine. So what was the main advice that she gave you in terms of keeping your diabetes stable, being able to race again? It sounds like there was a big change in your diet that happened.
Yeah, it changed. So I remember in that appointment, I met with like 3 different people. I went on a device called a Dexcom, which is a continuous glucose monitor that allows me to watch my blood sugar real time. Instead of just pricking my finger, putting blood on a test strip and getting one reading, it tells me what my blood sugar is and where it's going up or down. And she was like, you're never going to be in a race car without this. And that was obviously a huge tool. But then I remember she's like, you're going to see a nutritionist. And I'm like, oh boy, I have no idea what I'm doing as far as nutrition goes. But obviously, you know, I had started to learn about it through counting carbs and stuff. And I sat down with the nutritionist and kind of, she laid out a diet for me. And like, I mean, trust me, when I say I didn't know anything about nutrition, I mean it. And so like, she was very, very basic with me. It was like, you know, this is what's going to help you. This is kind of what's healthy. And then you know, a lot of stuff started to happen from there. And, but I think that one of the things that immediately started to happen was I knew I stopped taking everything for granted, you know, and I was like, man, if I want to be a race car driver, I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to work really hard. I'm probably gonna have to work harder than some other people because of diabetes and because of some of the challenges that have been put in front of me. But it really elevated me. You know, I started working out. I mean, I worked out a little bit before, but not like I should. Started training hard, started eating right. And what I found in all that was how great it was. You know, I mean, I found a kind of a passion for it, and I started to really enjoy it. And the nutrition side of things has always, since then, been something that I've really enjoyed. You know, and I take on the challenge as kind of something that I can make a difference in. And, you know, I try to get really creative when I'm traveling. And, you know, I've tried a million different diets. And, you know, I think that, you know, the thing that I've really found, and you talked about it before, is, you know, I've had a couple different friends that have gone plant-based, have gone plant-based, and some of them are athletes, and they were like, man, like my training got better. I feel better while I'm competing. And I was like, man, that's really interesting. And like, anytime someone tells me that they've had a good experience with nutrition, I'm really excited about it, and piques my interest. Mm-hmm. And so I tried it, and I was like, man, I'm just going to try it for like a couple of days during the week. Just have like you know, just try and incorporate it a little bit here and there. Yeah. And I did it for 3 days and felt so good that I just kept going. And I just really enjoyed it and felt great. And so it just slowly transitioned into something that I took on and made a big impact in my everything, training and competing.
So you said that it made you feel really great. Was there anything specifically, or what was the biggest thing that you noticed when you started to transition to a plant-based diet?
I would say the energy. And it's not just energy that I would notice. It wasn't just like, oh my God, I wake up, I'm just energetic all the time, right? Like it wasn't that. And, but it was like, I didn't have these lulls in my day. I stopped having like times where I'm just like, you know, just so tired and so, and obviously, you know, if as busy of a lifestyle as this is, you know, you got to fit in workouts where you can, and you've just got to make things happen. And, you know, when those days where I would just be, you know, so tired and so sluggish feeling, and then you know, that's the only hour, 2 hours that I have to work out that day. You know, I was in trouble, and I stopped having this, and you know, that was awesome. And then, you know, I think mental clarity is the other thing, you know, and I think that kind of falls in, but like, I just didn't have any fogginess. Like I was just so alert, you know, and I just felt, you know, energy is one thing, right? Like there's times where I'm worn out and I'm tired, but I'm still mentally sharp. And I just felt like I was more alert, more aware of everything, than I had been before.
Yeah, well, that sounds very important when you're going, 150 miles an hour on a racetrack for 3 hours?
Oh, yeah. We see 200 on 200 miles an hour as a regular occurrence in NASCAR.
Wow. Okay, yeah, definitely need mental clarity there.
Yeah.
So it's helped with your racing too, or just mental clarity throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, it's helped everywhere. You know, I think that, you know, that's what I was talking about. It's not just, you know, the training, I think, you know, has a direct impact. And that's something that, you know, I feel like when I can train better, I compete better. But nutrition on race day is even more important. You know, I mean, I can go struggle through a workout. I can't go struggle through a race. I mean, that's what you train all week for. That's what you game plan for. And so, you know, I think that there's a direct translation, you know, and we put there's so much work that goes into every time you're on the racetrack, whether it's engineering, crew chief, fuel strategy, pit stop. Everyone has such an important role that, you know, I feel like as a driver, there's only so much you can do. You know what I mean? Everyone's doing everything they can do. So how do you set yourself apart? How do you get that little bit of an edge? And so I feel like, you know, tapping into myself and what I put in my body and how hard I train my body, that's an edge that I can give I can just outwork them, and I can do things to set myself apart. And I feel like my diet has been something that's really helped.
Oh, that's awesome. So you mentioned that, the diet gives you enough energy to train for your races. And what do you do to train for your races? What's your average kind of workout routine look like?
Yeah, so kind of like the diet, I have been into triathlons and tri training, biking, running, swimming. I have done just weightlifting, like where I'm like, all I'm going to do is lift weights.
Yeah.
And then I've done kickboxing, CrossFit, Orange Theory. I mean, like I have done a lot of different workouts. And I think the one I got with the trainer not that long ago, and he has like really taken me to the next level. I feel like he's worked with a lot of different race car drivers, and he really specializes in that. And so it's a mixture of, of kind of everything, a lot of strength training, a lot of endurance, and as well as kind of that high intensity, more like interval type training. I think in the race car, you see a lot of spikes in your heart rate, right? So you're going 200 miles an hour and it's 150 degrees inside the car on a hot day, 160 degrees on your hottest day. You're losing 5 to 10 pounds. And so you do have, your average heart rate is usually somewhere between 130 and 150. You see a lot of spikes. You see a lot of 180, 190, 195, 200 if it really gets crazy out there. Yeah. And, that's obviously you're physically exerting yourself a lot, but those moments of adrenaline where you're just, 3 or 4 wide and putting yourself in situations that you probably shouldn't be in, or no sane person willingly puts themselves in those positions, but your heart rate just goes through the roof. You get adrenaline overload. And, those are the moments that I train hard for, is that, I'm comfortable and I've trained to be, when I'm at 195, I'm still on top of it. When my heart rate's through the roof, I can still make good decisions, and I'm not just driving with my tongue hanging out. I'm still in control of the situation.
Wow. It sounds like you have a lot of mental toughness. Is there anything that you do to prepare for that?
It's funny, I didn't really put a lot of value into that mental toughness thing until when I got diagnosed, and I thought that I had challenges in life, and then you start to learn what real challenges are. And so I think that I started to really put some value in that. And, when the obstacles come my way, how am I going to deal with them? Am I going to get frustrated? Am I going to get sad? How am I going to deal with it? And that mental toughness piece, if you think about it, NASCAR is a really unique sport because the only other thing I can compare it to is probably golf, in the sense that you're competing, you're one guy and one team competing against, for us, it's 39 others every week. And if you have 5 or 6 wins in a year, that is an unbelievable year. And so that means out of a 33 race schedule, you're going to lose the vast majority of your races. And, we still look at top 5s and top 10s as good races, but still you're losing a lot of races in there. And so being able to deal with those and be mentally tough, and not letting the tough days and the obstacles and the challenges set you back, but rather, motivate you to do better and dig deeper, and to do more to try and get to that next level, is something that I've, really been able to find in myself. And, those bad days, you might have, you come home that night and you're frustrated, but then you wake up the next day and you're just ready to go and you're more motivated than ever.
Yeah. And it sounds like it must be all the more exciting when you win too.
Oh yeah. The wins are definitely the highest of highs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Something that caught my attention: losing 5 to 10 pounds during the race. What do you do to recover from that?
Yeah, that's brutal, and I think that the recovery side of things is the toughest part. And I've talked to my trainer a lot about it, and it's something that we've really, it's easy to prepare the days, not easy, but it's easy to stay motivated the days leading up to the event, or Monday morning you're in the gym, but we race on Saturdays, and Saturday night you don't you just want to take the night off, and Sunday you want to just hang out and this time of year watch football or whatever. But the recovery side of things is so important. So for me, I think that you're so depleted. So obviously hydrated, a lot of electrolytes, a lot of water, and but also too what you put in your body. And I think for me, your body's lost so much, so much, and you're so depleted that a lot of carbs, a lot of energy sources is so important. So you're trying to place so much glycogen and different stuff in your body. And so I had a lot of carbs on Sunday, which is good because carbs aren't there's not too many carbs in my diet throughout the week. So I incorporated a ton of them on Sunday.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice Sunday.
Yeah, it is.
So we talked a little bit about mental toughness, and you said you faced a lot of challenges. Have you faced any challenges specifically as a plant-based athlete, especially being on the road all the time?
Yeah, I think that, being creative is, is so important because when you're on the road, especially, NASCAR, we race in some pretty rural areas. Like there's not a lot of options to choose from.
Yeah.
And so, I think that that's where over the, 25-year-old Ryan's a lot more prepared than 20-year-old Ryan, and, that's where, like Mama says, is offered such a great opportunity for me to be able to bring in, I throw half a dozen meals on the bus before the weekend gets started, and then I'm set. And I think that before that it was finding whatever's nearby. Either if I can find obviously you can find a grocery store, but still I don't. There's not a lot. There's times where I just don't want to cook. So there's times where I've gone to Chipotle and gotten 5 Chipotle bowls of rice, beans, and tofu, and live off that. But I think that it is challenging, and I think that it is something that you really have to plan out and you have to be prepared for, and you have to, it has to be a priority. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And I think that if for me, it's not a choice to be a priority. It's something that I think is part of what's going to set me apart. So I make it a priority.
Yeah, it's really challenging, especially on the road. We're definitely glad we can help you out there. We actually just packaged your bundle today, sent it out. Don't worry, we have some chili in there, some lazy lasagna. We know you like those.
The lazy lasagnas, it's pretty hard to beat.
Definitely, especially if you're plant-based and you don't have a lot of cheese or creaminess, that just totally takes care of it. I've had people argue with me that there's ricotta in it. So.
Oh yeah, no. The problem for me is when I pick the bag up and like I'm the kind of guy like even if it's in the fridge, I'll just open it and start eating it, and next thing I know, the whole bag's gone. And then
yeah, I do that too.
And then I've gone over my calorie limit for the day. My trainer yells at me.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's all right. He just makes me work out for an hour longer, and then it all averages out.
So just curious, what else are you passionate about? What are your hobbies? What do you do when you're not racing? When you're not recovering or training for racing? What do you like to do? I see that you have a dog.
I do have a Labrador that loves to run around during video interviews. But so I mean, I'm definitely a dog person. Love animals, but specifically dogs. And I do have a chocolate lab who's awesome. But I love to golf. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible golfer, but I enjoy it. And I mean, I'm such a competitive person that just doing anything with competition, and it's easy to turn pretty much anything to a competition. But other than that, I like to enjoy myself. I'm 25, and hang out with my buddies and go on the lake, and then family. I think that definitely a very family-oriented guy. I just love to see my mom and dad. They still live out in California, but I've been fortunate enough that I get to see them pretty often. They go to a lot of races, and so we spend a ton of time together. And they've been huge supporters of mine. So other than that, and then obviously since my diagnosis and living with type 1, I really wanted to use the racing platform to spread a lot of awareness about diabetes. And we've been able to make a huge impact and had I've had a lot of people come up to me and tell me that, I've made a difference to them or a loved one that lives with diabetes. And so I've been so active in the diabetes space, and that's not a hobby. You talk about a passion. That is a huge passion of mine. And I've been fortunate to be able to spend a lot of time in that space.
Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit more about how you spread this awareness and what you do when you go around to talk to people about, living with type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've talked so much about, in interviews and stuff, and even just around racing. The challenges of competing with diabetes and getting in that car and being exposed to those elements for that long. But away from the racing side of things, it's been diabetes summer camps, children's hospitals, endocrinologist offices. As simple as there's a race fan that reaches out to me on Twitter that wants to meet up at the racetrack and just hang out. I think that when you meet someone else that lives with diabetes, there's an instant connection, there's an instant bond. You know, you meet someone, you know, there's a lot of small talk and what, you know, whatever. But now when you meet someone else with diabetes, there's no, you know, I mean, you never run out of things to talk about because you share so many of the same challenges and stuff that, you know, people that don't live with diabetes, you know, they just, not a bad way, in a very good way, they just have never gone through. And so, you know, I've just had, if there's a silver lining in being diagnosed with diabetes, it's the people that I've met and the people that I've developed relationships with, because they're amazing people and very inspiring. And some people, you know, that I'll be friends with forever through this connection we have.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that when you got this life-changing news, instead of letting it kind of devastate your life, you took it, and it kind of attests to your mental toughness. You took it and created this whole new, you know, beautiful life from it. You're still racing, you're spreading awareness, all of these things that, you know, never would have happened, never would have come if you hadn't got that diagnosis. So it's just the work you're doing is incredible. We all love you here, Mama says, when you're racing on and off the racetrack. And it was great talking with you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for chatting. And then I'm looking forward to my next shipment here soon.
Oh, great. It's on its way.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ryan.